Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and today I am bringing you another episode in the Bad Teachers State-Specific series. So far, I have brought you to Arkansas, Texas, Ohio, and today I'm bringing you to the state of Missouri. And we're going to expose just a few of the bad teachers from that state caught in inappropriate relationships with students. And I'm going to start this one off in Joplin, Missouri, which even if you have never been to Missouri, you have likely heard of Joplin. It was the site of a horrific tragedy on May 22nd of 2011 when an EF5 tornado hit the city, essentially destroying it. Some 8,000 buildings, with over 4,000 of those being people's homes, completely destroyed. 158 people lost their lives in that disaster. So let's go to 2017, just 6 years after that disaster, and I'm going to tell you about a 42-year-old former teacher by the name of Amanda Ruth Schweitzer, who was arrested when a mother of 3 boys in Joplin reported that Amanda had sent nude photos to her son on Instagram. This would open up an investigation that would uncover other illegal acts at the hands of this bad teacher, so let's get into it. And Amanda Schweitzer, she started her teaching career in August of 2010 in the Joplin School District as an 8th grade reading teacher. This was at North Middle School. And she continued in that role throughout the subsequent years, even through the devastation of the Joplin tornado. So in October of 2015, she gets married and she continues teaching at North Middle School. Now, at this point, everything seemed fine. She's lifing, right? She's getting married. She's got a job that is considered somewhat professional. But in March of 2017, that would all change when a mom reports to school officials that Amanda was sending nude photos to multiple students at that school. This, of course, would launch an investigation, and through that investigation, a 13-year-old boy, 13, would come forward with some pretty damning evidence of not only this abuse, but also that he had sex at Amanda's house on at least 2 occasions. So on April 7th of 2017, Schweitzer, she gets arrested on a charge of first-degree statutory rape of that 13-year-old student. Now, at this point in time, she is 37 years old. So the arrest warrant stemmed from the 13-year-old saying he had been driven to her house where clothing was removed and the two had sex. And at this time, police were also still looking into those Instagram nudes that reportedly, allegedly, she had sent to other multiple students, but that was not what she was being arrested for here. She gets arraigned on that charge. She pleads not guilty. Of course, you have nothing to lose in an arraignment by pleading not guilty. She pays her bond and she gets released. And it's nearly another year before anything else occurs in this case. When on January of 2018, a federal grand jury indicts her on separate charges involving those Instagram nudes. So now you got the feds investigating you. Again, she pleads not guilty, and throughout the next year, there's little to no movement on this case on the criminal side. Now, on the civil side, several lawsuits surface. Now, one in particular is from Safeco Insurance, of all people, and they enter into a lawsuit against Amanda and her husband. Now, I'm assuming this is on behalf of the victim in this case, and one thing it does do is it provides at least a little bit of detail. I'm not going to review this entire lawsuit, but just one instance listed in the lawsuit, and it reads, and we're going to refer to the minor child as victim. Victim who through his mother has a pending civil suit for damages in state court against his middle school teacher, Amanda Schweitzer, and Amanda's husband, Jonas Schweitzer. Victim's civil action stems from the allegation that Amanda groomed and subsequently engaged in sexual intercourse with victim. Amanda has been charged with crimes for her alleged misconduct. Amanda and Jonah are insured under Safeco homeowners insurance policy. After Owens and victim made a demand to Safeco for payment of the policy, Safeco brought this declaratory judgment action, naming defendants Amanda, Jonah, and it names some other people in a motion for judgment. And it basically says victim was a student at North Middle School during 2016-17 school year. During that same year, Amanda was an adult female teacher employed by the Joplin School District at North Middle School, where she served as a teacher to the victim. In early 2017, Amanda began grooming victim via social media and text message in violation of policies. On or about March 29th, 2017, victim was late for the bus and subsequently missed school. Amanda messaged victim when she noticed he was not at school. Amanda subsequently drove to his home and picked him up without the consent of his mother. Could you imagine that if you're a mother right now? While at her home, Amanda engaged in sexual intercourse with victim. As a result of the encounter, victim has sustained emotional injuries. And y'all, this is a middle school student. In addition, victim was forced to finish the semester off campus after the encounter with Amanda came to light. He subsequently transferred schools. And that's pretty much what that lawsuit goes into. Now, as I said, her husband was named in that because it basically said, well, heck, I'll read it for you. It says that the petition alleges Jonah knew or should have known of the proclivities of his wife to groom young male students and prey on them for sex. I don't know what that's all about. I read into it. I can't find anything where he was aware or it appeared that somebody thought he was aware of all this stuff. So if you know something about that, let me know. But there you have it. That gives you a little more details, at least into that victim. So it's not until June of 2020 when there is what I would consider some major movement in this case, when Amanda Schweitzer, who is at this time 41 years old, she takes a plea and pleads guilty to one count of inciting a minor for illegal sexual activity. Now, note the timing here. June of 2020. COVID was probably at its peak at this time, so it took a while, actually a year and a half, before she's going to be sentenced. But she is indeed sentenced in November of 2021. And I'm happy for the first time in a long time since I've been covering these cases to say the sentence might actually fit. She is sentenced to 20 years in prison with no parole and 15 years probation upon her release. So it's a good start for Missouri. Now, did the feds play a role in all of that? I'm sure they did. But hey, that is a sentence that fits the crime in my view. So let's see if it's going to continue here as we go to Mexico, Missouri. And yes, the name of the town is Mexico. And I'm going to tell you about another bad teacher by the name of Janae Nunnelly. And I want to shout out listener Jessica for putting me on this particular teacher's trail. Now, Janae was 26 years old and an elementary school teacher when she was arrested in February of 2025, just last year, for having a nearly year-long sexual relationship with a student. And subsequent to that, it would also come out she was having sexual relationships with multiple students. Now, I do need to mention that although she was a elementary school teacher, the students she was having sex with were all high school students. So a little bit about Janae. In September of 2020, she starts working with the Mexico, Missouri public school system. Initially, she wasn't teaching in a classroom. She was helping as an aide, and she was also working with the cheer squad at the middle and high school levels. In 2023, however, she does become a certified teacher, and she starts teaching at Eugene Field Elementary School, and she starts coaching as the head coach of the elementary school's cheer team. Now, very limited information on this case came out, but I did manage to dig up some details. So I'm going to take you to March 5th of 2025, and an officer draws up an affidavit for arrest alleging the following. And I'm going to read this one. It's very short, but it's the affidavit on this case, and it reads, on 2/25 of 2025, the Mexico Police Department was notified by a local school district in Mexico, Missouri, that one of the employees of the district, Janae Marie Nunnelly, had been engaging in a sexual relationship with a currently enrolled student. Police were also notified that Nunnelly had been engaged in a sexual relationship with a previous student when he was attending the school in the district. Police were also notified that Nunnelly was an employee of the district during both sexual engagements. Police made contact with victim number one, who is a current student of the school in the local school district. Victim number one stated he engaged in vaginal sexual intercourse 2 times around June of 2024 with Nunnelly. Victim number one stated both times he met with Nunnelly in Ladonia, Missouri, and she transported him to her residence in Mexico, Missouri. Victim number one stated Nunnelly had vaginal intercourse in her bedroom in her bed. Victim number one stated that Nunnelly added him on social media platform prior to the sexual contact around 5 of 24. They spoke, then arranged a meeting to engage in sexual intercourse. Mexico police made contact with victim number two, who, while attending a school in the local school district, had multiple sexual encounters with Nunnelly, starting between March of 2022 and April of 2022. Victim number two stated Nunnelly engaged in oral sex with him and vaginal sex between 15 and 25 times while attending the school in a local school district. Victim number two stated Nunnelly added him on social media around 3 of 2022, March, and April of 2022, and they spoke for some time before engaging in a sexual relationship. Victim number two said he continued a sexual relationship with Nunnelly until early of 2024. So you're talking almost a 2-year time period. Victim number two graduated from the school in the local school district in 2022. So he graduates in 2020. So he was a senior when all this was going down, and they actually continued for 2 years after that. So I'm not sure what the delay is here, but it's not until the 20th of March of 2025 that Nunnelly turns herself in. She's read her Miranda rights, and under questioning from investigators, she states that she engaged in sex with victim number two, but she said he had already graduated from high school by that point. She also admitted to engaging in oral sex and vaginal intercourse with victim number two multiple times. She also admitted to exchanging phone numbers with victim number one in May of 2024, and that she began messaging him. She said he was her assistant in summer school duties in June of 2024, and she said that after summer school ended, she met him on 2 occasions and brought him back to her house in Mexico, Missouri, and engaged in vaginal intercourse with victim number one in her bed. So she admitted to that. And victim number one at this time was still a student at the high school, unlike victim number two. So it's important to note that the school had known about this since late February, and they'd already fired Janae even before this arrest affidavit was drawn up. So, of course, after her admission of these acts, she's put into jail and she's arraigned, and she pleaded not guilty, and she's given bail, which she makes. So from March to October, there's no movement in this case. Then in October of 2025, she sees the writing on the wall. She takes a plea, and she pleads guilty to one count of sexual contact with a student. As part of the deal, they dropped the other count. And on January 9th of 2026, just last month, the prosecution files what's known as a sentencing memorandum with the court, which is really just a memo saying, hey, we would like this, fill in the blank, as our sentence. And as part of this, some new information comes out in this memo. And I'm going to refer to what's known as a sentencing recommendation report. And it says the state's recommendation for the maximum sentence, 4 years in the Department of Correction. So they're seeking the max. It goes on to say, it is a profound betrayal of trust and authority to exploit a student. It's not just a crime. Such a sentence safeguards the community while ensuring the defendant confronts the real harm caused by a power differential relationship. Ms. Nunnelly pleaded guilty to one count of sexual contact with the student, but she admitted to 3 inappropriate relationships with student. 2 were sexual in nature, and 1 involved using marijuana with the student. Ms. Nunnelly taught at the elementary school, but managed to acquire these connections with the high school students through working as a coach and as a supervising teacher for an A-plus program student. For both sexual relationships, Ms. Nunnelly identified herself as being the first to reach out to these students. She added 1 through Snapchat and provided the other with her phone number on a sticky note. These are not students with which she normally would have a high level of contact, but she took steps to reach out to these boys and form relationships that were inappropriate for a teacher and student. The state is always concerned about recidivism. This case is particularly troubling as it appears many mandated reporters failed miserably in their duties to make prompt calls when they heard about rumors of sex abuse of these minors. It is also worth noting that 2 of the letters in support of Miss Nunnelly were written by Jeff Anderson and Linda Mallett, who were other professionals working in the same school district. What does this say about the culture in this school district? This lackadaisical attitude requires a strong response to address the danger in our community. The sentencing assessment report displays Miss Nunnelly's distinct lack of understanding that she did anything wrong. In the section regarding criminal attitudes and behavior patterns, it's noted that Miss Nunnelly exhibited remorse for what she had done. Unfortunately, this is undercut by her own version of events, where she places blame on others and states she did not think this affected the victim at all. Miss Nunnelly explained that she did not know her actions were illegal, did not know they were against school policy, and does not view 17-year-olds as minors. Miss Nunnelly doesn't feel remorse for her actions. She feels remorse for the fact that she got caught. And I'm not going to read the rest of that, but how about that? 2 letters of recommendation in support of this bad teacher by other teachers in the same school district. If that don't blow your mind, I don't know what else would. So on January 12th of 2026, she's sentenced. And as proud as I was for Missouri for that first teacher that we covered today and the sentence that she got, this one, I can't praise as much. Essentially, she gets 5 years probation. She must attend substance abuse counseling, and that's for the marijuana that she smoked with the student. And she cannot consume alcohol. And get this, she's not even required to register as a sex offender. That's unbelievable to me. Heck of a deal for having sex with 17-year-old high school kids some 20 times at a minimum, allegedly. So let's go to Jefferson City, Missouri. And I'm going to tell you about Jennifer Cecil, who at the time of her arrest was 41 years old. She was a volunteer teacher at Lighthouse Prep Academy, which is a private Christian school in Jefferson City, Missouri. And again, shout out to listener Jessica for putting me onto this bad teacher. Thank you, Jessica. So it was alleged in January of 2023 that Jennifer Cecil had sexual intercourse with a student 2 to 3 times per week at her home over a 7-month period. So do the math here. Basically, that is a minimum of 56 different sexual encounters with a 16-year-old in 7 months. Again, this chick is 41 years old. Now, there's not much out there as it relates to Jennifer's background, so I won't go into great detail on that other than to say it was reported she was very active in her church for many years, which would make sense considering the fact she was volunteering at a Christian school in the area. And also, she was married when all of this came out during the sexual instances with this minor. Now, how did all this come out? Well, as I told you, the alleged events took place 2 to 3 times a week on a weekly basis between December of 2022 and July of 2023 in Cecil's home. The victim told investigators that he and Cecil would use Instagram to communicate and send sexually explicit photos. And do y'all see a pattern with all these cases that I covered? Always starts out on Instagram or Snapchat or something like that. Social media has made it easy for these predators. The victim said that they would use the app's vanish mode where messages disappear after you view them. So court documents say the victim's family, they confronted Cecil about the relationship. Apparently, this victim fessed up to his family that he had screwed this teacher 56 times. And so they go to her, they ask her about this, and she confesses to this family that the allegations were true. So they did the right thing. They called police, and in July of 2023, she is arrested. So note this. Here is a situation where the abuse was still going on up to the point that she was arrested. It's the only reason she stopped. So she's charged with 4 counts of first-degree sexual abuse, second-degree statutory rape, second-degree sodomy, and sexual contact with a student. She's arraigned, she gets bond, and she gets an ankle monitor pending her trial. So there are a ton of delays with this one. Almost 2 years before, she cops a plea. And this is in January of 2025, and she pleads guilty to just 1 count of sexual abuse. And for all that, she gets this. A 41-year-old, mind you, in a major position of authority, screwing a 16-year-old kid at least 56 times over 7 months. What do you think she got? No fucking jail time. 0. None. 16 years old. She gets 10 years probation. If that don't make you say WTF, I don't know what does. Exactly why I do this for a living. Exposing these bad teachers. 56 times and you get no jail time. Unbelievable. I'd be all over that, judge. So let's go to our last one for today. And I'm going to take you to Springfield, Missouri, which, hey, home of Bass Pro Shops for those of you out there that are Bass Pro Shop fans. And I'm going to tell you about a bad teacher by the name of Carissa Jane Smith, who at the time of her arrest was 31 years old. And at that age, stands accused of 19 felonies, including 2 for child trafficking involving students. So according to the documents, Carissa worked for Dixon Middle School in Missouri as a substitute teacher for grades 6 through 8. It is alleged that during the 2022-2023 school year, she engaged in sexual acts with at least 2 students, with one of the victims being 14 years old or younger. She would pay these students cash, oftentimes $100 or more via Cash App, which is like $1 million to a 14-year-old, right, to have sex with them. It is also alleged she would provide them with marijuana and alcohol in exchange for sex acts. This chick was paying these students to sleep with her. These encounters would take place in various locations, including her home when her husband was at work, as well as her car, the side of the road, and in isolated gravel roads. Now, in 2023, before all of this came to light, Carissa is transferred to the high school level to be a paraprofessional. She continues to be married at this point, and her husband at one point must have became suspicious that something wasn't right with Carissa. He confronts her about it, and she tells her husband that a student was blackmailing her because she and the student smoked weed together, and he videoed it. Her husband then allegedly confronts this student about that's supposedly blackmailing her, threatens to beat him to death, the student, with a baseball bat. So I think that's where everything started coming out in this case. Then it gets even crazier. Her brother-in-law, her husband's brother, he somehow gets word that there's a video not of Carissa smoking weed with the student, but of Carissa having sex with a student. And he hears that this is circulating among all these young people. He goes over to Carissa's house to ask her about this. And lo and behold, he finds his sister-in-law butt naked, riding a 14-year-old student in the bed. So shortly after that, someone, and it's not clear whom, but I would, I don't know if it's this guy. I have no direct knowledge, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. Somebody reports it to the school. The school calls police, and they start investigating. And as I said, she gets arrested on 19 felonies, and she is in some deep shit. So when she gets arrested, she gets a $250,000 bond, and she does manage to bond out of jail. And for the next year, until mid-2025, everything is quiet. But here's how dumb this chick is. While she is out on bond on 19 felonies, trying to come up with a deal with prosecutors, what do you think happens? In September of 2025, authorities actually find Carissa at her home with one of the young victims. You can't make that shit up. She is arrested again on a charge of tampering with a witness, which, based on that charge, I would assume, or it sounds like, she brought the victim there to try to talk him into not testifying. But that dumb decision actually revokes her bond, and it's back to jail pending trial for Carissa. So in November of 2025, just a few months later, she realizes, I'm screwed. They got me dead to rights. She cops a plea, and she actually receives 10 years in prison. Now, that does seem a little bit light to me. Remember, the girl at the beginning of this case, the first teacher we covered, she got 20 years for I don't know if I'd say much less infractions, but it wasn't as bad as what I just read you. And she got 20 years, but the feds were involved. Feds were not involved here. But this chick had 19 felony counts and got 10 years in prison. That's a pretty good deal for her. But there you have it. At least she didn't get probation, right? Like two of the cases that we covered today. So in Missouri's case, and I'm going to start grading each state, and I'm going to call this my bad teacher's consequence scale. And in this case, in Missouri, I would grade them a C on my bad teacher's consequence scale. Be curious to know what you would grade them. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week with another episode of Bad Teachers. Now, we do drop other episodes on this feed. I just dropped one last week that is about the absolutely horrific abduction of Nancy Guthrie. That one has gotten a lot of play, so if you haven't had a chance, go listen to it. Things change daily. I'm probably going to do an update on that case coming up next week as well, but we drop all kinds of things on this feed. Bad Teachers will, of course, be an ongoing series as we go through the 50 states. Thank you so much for listening. Check out the Patreon, commercial-free early releases, all kinds of stuff, including files of everything we discuss on this show. That's patreon.com/exposedpodcastfiles. And until next time, for exposed, scandalous files of the elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.